All right, here's an example video of how to install a caulking joint and how to tool it properly so it comes out looking clean and bonds properly. This is an example if you're doing like a joint up against where a stone meets a house or any horizontal surface there where it hits a vertical. If you have a gap on there, you need to get backer rod installed in there first. The backer rod should be pressed down so you have, it should not be coming up higher than the joint, obviously, because it's going to poke through the caulking joint there, but usually go and press down to make sure it's like a quarter inch below the surface there. It doesn't have to be farther down than that. You don't have to have like an inch of space or anything like that, but quarter inch, 3/8 somewhere in there. Press it down. Next, you can get ready to put the tape lines down. So make sure the surface is cleaned off so the tape bonds. I usually use like Gorilla tape if I'm just putting it on the stone there. If it's really dry, painter's tape works fine. But the edge of your tape should be right where you want the edge of your caulk joint to finish. So putting that down there. I mean, taping's not like 100% necessary. I just do it because I know I'm not going to smear beyond where I want it to finish then. So there's guys that are awesome at it and don't use tape. And so it's more of a precautionary thing for that. If you're taping up against any sort of painted surface that's a good finish on there, do not use Gorilla tape. You should use painter's tape on that so you're not pulling tape off or pulling paint off when you pull that tape. But for this example, just using Gorilla tape on both surfaces there. Again, just make sure you know where you want the edge of the caulk joint to finish and run your line off of that. After that, just making everything's lined up right, going back one more time and making sure the backer rod's not pushing up too high anywhere, because that is a real pain when you're trying to tool the caulk joint and it's sticking up because it shows then. When you cut the tip for the caulk gun there, you want to make sure it's at the same width as your joint there if you can. And when you lay down the bead, you want to be putting in enough caulk that you're filling the joint well. You do not want to put too much in there because you're going to end up with having to cut off a lot. But the edges of the tip there should be hitting each side of the caulk joint. And then if you're going down, you're tooling it a little bit with just the tip of the gun there as you go down. Whenever you're doing caulking setup, you should always have a easy spot to set the gun when you're done. If caulking gets on anything, it's not super fun to clean off, so I always have the rag underneath where I set my gun, or I set it off the area I'm doing the caulking if I'm doing it on a porch. I always have wipes with me to use those. Rags work too, but those wet wipes are super nice for cleaning. When you are choosing which knife to use, it should be a knife that is going to be the same size as the joint there. So the first one was too big, I wouldn't have been able to press it right. But that second knife is correct. Checking down on there was a spot here that there was not enough caulk in the joint. So going back and adding a little bit more there because it was too low. And so making sure I have enough there. Again, as you do it, you're going to learn what the right amount is. Too much is a royal pain, and then not enough, you're not going to be able to press and have the right bonding on the joint there. But after that's done and you have the right size knife to use on that, your first thing you're going to do is cut the joint. So you actually run the knife this way. Knife's touching each side of the joint there, but as you go down here, you are cutting off the excess caulking there. And then as you go, you're going to have to stop periodically. You can see it's building up there on the knife. So you're going to take that, remove it. Make sure the knife's clean. Clean knives are very important to work with on that. If you have dirty knives, it's going to catch on stuff. But then resume cutting it there. As I get up to this edge, the tape's moving a little bit. And so sometimes you got to hold that edge down and make sure it's not going. After that, you're going to strike the joint. You should not end up with a ton of extra caulking at this point because you've already cut off the excess on there. After I struck it, there was a couple spots I could see that it was not bonded right. So on there, you can see that it's not bonded to the edge there. So going back to add a little more caulking on there. And follow the same steps still there, where you're going to cut off the excess and then strike it again. After that's all done, you're going to pull the tape. Just careful as you're pulling the edges up there. If your caulk joint is smeared over your tape line a bunch, you're going to have an issue with that. The caulk should just be barely coming over the tape line there if you did everything right. After that's pulled, if you need to, if you have a lot of ridges on the edges there, you can do one more striking of the joint. It's not always necessary at this point, but it should be just a clean finish striking if you need to do that. For finishing a caulk joint, if you still have things you need to work out, using soapy water on your finger or the knife, you can go through and smooth it over without having the material stick to your hand or anything on that. I'm just cleaning off a little edge there, but you don't want to play around with it much after this. If you don't want a shiny finish, sometimes we'll brush sand into it. Playground sand or other sand will brush into the joint to have it not be so shiny of a finish.